Welcome to Mutually Collaborate, an initiative between Old Mutual and Unleashing Leadership Potential, ULP. My name is Thabo, and in this segment, we're going to delve into why does financial education matter. And for this, I'm joined by an expert, Thabo Hollo, who is going to help me unpack this specific topic. Thabo, can you introduce yourself?
My name is Thabo Hollo. I'm the Programs Manager for Financial Education at Old Mutual.
Today, we're hoping to delve into financial education and why it matters. And I'm really hoping that our viewers will shift their knowledge, shift their behavior, and improve their financial literacy. What do you think about that, Thabo?
Certainly, especially changing behaviors. That is one of the most important aspects of financial education.
Awesome. I really like this, and I'm looking forward to all the segments that are going to be covered today.
Today we're going to talk about personal finance management and the importance of managing your personal finances very wisely. Just before we start, I want us to paint a picture of what South Africa and the globe looks like at the moment. We know that we're living in tough times where the cost of the living is very high, but coupled with that is food inflation, is the economic situation around the globe that has an impact on South Africa itself, is the rand that we keep on stretching and stretching. Right now, we're dealing with load shedding. We're dealing with the situation of floods countrywide. All of these things have an impact on how you manage your finances. Managing one's finances is very important as it helps us achieve our personal goals, the goals that of a family, and our aspirations in life. But for us to do that, we need to acquire knowledge. So knowledge shift in terms of our personal finances is very important. And with that knowledge, we need to behave differently. For the purposes of today, we're going to look at the secret of the big five in managing your finances. We're going to look at how to be fearless like a lion, look at how to pay attention like an elephant, look at how you charge up your debt like a rhino, how to set your goals and focus on your goals like a leopard, and how to protect your head or your family like a buffalo. Firstly, let's look at how you become fearless like a lion in managing your finances. But before we get there, we need to understand the psychology of money. What influences your decisions relating to how you spend and your money? Do you rely on your family? Do you rely on social media? Are you influenced by social media influences? Do you look at adverts? What is it that you consider before you spend your money? To be fearless like a lion, you need to stay in tune with how you manage your finances and the psychology of money. We know that advertisers would like to trick you into spending your hard-earned money. Some of the aspects that you need to be aware of is when advertisers trick you into believing that this commodity is running out. Or, for example, you can buy one and get one free. Or they're using social media influencers to tap into your money. So all of those are the tricks that are used by various advertisers for you to spend your hard-earned money. Now that we know how to be fearless like a lion when dealing with the money, now let's talk about paying attention like an elephant. You need to understand where the origin of your income is and where your money is spent. To get to that, we need to formulate a budget. A budget consists of 4 critical elements. It's knowing what the sources of your income is, where your money is spent, categorizing what your expenditures look like, and tracking your budget. Now, that sounds like easy, but I know that is not just easy. In fact, there's quite a bit of excuses that we give before we do budgeting. One of them is, I don't know maths, I can't add. Secondly, I just don't have time. That's a second excuse that we usually use. The third bit is, I don't have enough income to budget. Here's the story. For as long as you're spending money, you need a budget. The last bit is, hey, I can't track the budget. So budgeting is important, but what is this thing called a budget? A budget is a means of tracking your income, your expenditure against your goals. So first thing is you've set the goals and say, these are the goals that I want to achieve. Therefore, for me to achieve those goals, I need a certain income. But most importantly, you need to understand what those sources of income is. Are you earning money from a salary? Do you have a side hustle? Are you running your own business? Or are you receiving return on investment from your previous investments? If there's anything that COVID-19 has taught us, is we need to diversify our income. We've seen during COVID that relying on a single income has put us on a back foot. But critically important is to know what your sources of income is. Now let's talk about your expenses. You need to understand what you're spending your money on. Are you spending your money on rent or mortgage? Are you spending your money on school fees? What exactly are the categories that you're spending your money? But before we even to get to that, we need to understand the difference between the needs and the wants. Not to want to need it, but you need to understand what is the difference. Firstly, the needs are the stuff that you can't live without. Things like your home, things like food, things like basic clothing. Those are the elements that you can't live without. Yes, you might want to spend your money on your wants. There's nothing wrong with that. After all, you've earned some of this money. But you need to distinguish that, is it something that you can defer for a later expenditure? I mean, if there's something that you really, really want to buy, is it something that you can afford? Is it something that you've planned for? Is it something that is within your budget? Or is it something that frivolously that you can do without? And most of the time, it helps just to step back, maybe take an extra sleep, just to find out if you really, really want that extra pair of shoes. But where we are now is on the budget side. Then you need to categorize your expenses, whether they fall under the needs or the wants, so that if you overextend yourself, you know exactly what to remove. Now that we've made a decision to purchase the item, and we've checked that we can afford the item, we've checked that it is part of the budget, we've checked that the total cost of credit is there, and there's no other cheaper alternative for this item, by all means, we can go ahead and purchase the item. But remember, include that purchase as part of your budget. There are tools out there that will help you track your budget. My personal favorite is 22/7. It's a free app that you can download from either your Android devices or your Apple devices. But either way, try compiling your budget. Having dealt with the budget, now let's look at the aspects of goal setting. We're looking at focusing on your goals like a leopard. When you set your goals, remember to write them down. They are not goals unless they are written somewhere and they are being able to be tracked and monitored. Whether you put them on a PC, whether you put reminders on your phone, whether you put them on and stick them on your wall, in your office, in your bedroom, it doesn't matter. But what is important is let's set those goals. The goals can be different. My goals could be, I want to be a soccer star, right? When you're setting up your goals, remember to set SMART goals. They must be specific, they must be measurable, you are able to achieve them, they are realistic, and they are time-bound. All of those goals, remember to categorize them whether they're short, medium, or long-term. An example of a short-term goal might be, I want to complete my studies within this year. So I'm going to take up a 12-month program that I need to pay for. So that is typically what would be a short-term goal. Your medium-term goals would be something that you might want to finance using debt, but is assets such as a motor vehicle. It's something that you need to track, but you will finance largely out of your borrowings. Long-term goals include acquiring assets such as housing that you would take a longer-term borrowing for. Those are the typical goals that you would have, and you would track them using your own budget. Setting goals is very important. Yes, I might have my own personal goals, but remember that if you have family goals, it's important to talk to all family members regarding the goals. If you have kids and you are married, it's important to have joint goals that are of a family nature. We spoke about goal setting. We spoke about how your goals influence your budget. And we said, as part of your goal setting, the goals that are of a longer term mostly will be financed out of debt. Now that we've dealt with the goals and we made them part of your budget, now let's look at charging at your debt like a rhino. Now there's two types of debt. There's bad debt and good debt. Bad debt includes purchasing your food using debt or non-asset items using credit. But good debt includes student loans, buying a house, or buying a business. Don't let debt run you. Now let's look at the best way to make credit work for you. Firstly, when you're looking for a loan, make sure that you get the loan that you can actually afford. Before you get the loan, shop around for the best interest rates that you can get. Did you know that you are entitled to one free credit report every year? Your credit report will show you your credit history and your credit score. It's important to know your credit score because your credit score determines what kind of loan you qualify for and for how much. Remember that your credit bureau is there to keep your credit history. So the history will determine on how you consume and use your credit. Your payment history is very important. So there might be adverse reports on your credit report, and those will stay there up until you clear up your debt. This includes missing payment, judgment, and debt review. All of those determine what your credit score will look like in your credit bureau report. Now that you've taken up debt, let's look at how you can get out of financial trouble. You're feeling overwhelmed with financial state? Don't worry. Stay positive and you can work with it. Firstly, take inventory. Write down all your debt, income, and expenses. Secondly, look at your expenses. Cut or reduce them to a bare minimum. Third, is there any way else that you can increase your income? Look at aspects such as part-time jobs, selling things that you don't necessarily need, or finding side hustles. Again, stop taking new debt until you are in a better financial position. Focus on paying off your debt using one of the two known models, which is the Snowball or the Avalanche tactics. Check your progress weekly or as often as you can. Now that we've highlighted that there's two methods of repaying your debt, those are Snowball and Avalanche. Let's look at each model. In Snowball, you will identify which one is the lowest repayment that you have on your debt, and you start repaying that. And take the money that you are using to take that once it is paid off to repay the next debt and the other debt up until your debt is finalized. When we look at the Avalanche model, look at which debt is the highest in terms of interest rate. Start your repayment with the highest or the most expensive loans that you have. In that way, you are able to repay your loans and stay out of debt. There is absolutely nothing wrong with using debt for good reasons. The only thing that we need to be cautious of is do not overextend yourself And if you find yourself in a position where you've overextended, financial services providers are there to assist you to structure your debt or help you formulate a payment plan. Talk to your financial services providers. Now that we've discussed debt, how to manage debt, what is the difference between good and bad debt, let's talk about protecting your head like a buffalo. Now we're talking about insurance. Insurance is important for two main reasons: to protect you as a person and protect your assets that are important to you. There's two types of insurances. There's short-term insurance and long-term insurance. Short-term insurance covers assets such as your household items, your motor vehicles, or any items of a personal nature. Whereas, on the other hand, long-term insurance covers your life or any instances that might affect your life or your ability to earn a living. As I've stated, there are two types of insurances. There's long-term and short-term insurance. The typical examples of short-term insurance include medical aid cover, funeral cover, car and asset cover, or household cover. Examples of long-term insurance include life cover, dread, disease and disability cover, hospital gap cover. Those are examples of insurances, both long-term and short-term. Protecting your head, you need to decide whether you need insurance or not. The first decision that you make is whether or not do you actually need insurance. In cases where you don't need insurance, it's okay. You can self-insure. But if you need insurance, or should you need insurance, there's still aspects to be considered. Firstly, what kind of insurance do you need? Is there long-term or a short-term insurance? Secondly, can you actually afford that insurance? It's very important that whatever insurance you take, you should be able to afford that. If you can't, then you risk a lapses where your asset or even your life is not covered. So make sure that whatever insurance that you buy is within your affordability. Once you have insurance, update your information regularly. For example, cell phone numbers. If there's any change of address or your risk address, please update that accordingly. Adjust the amount that you are insured for on a regular basis. For example, if you buy a new set of TV or there's any other changes within your household, ensure that your amount insured is adjusted accordingly. Continuously shop around for prices and ask if you can get discounts for adding additional items on your insurance. Inform your insurer of any changes that might affect your cover. For example, if there's any renovations, did you know that if you include a thatch roof, it changes the nature of the insurance? That kind of information is important for your insurance cover. The best way to shop for your insurance is to speak to your financial advisor, who will be able to assess your needs. Make sure that the product that you buy is appropriate for your needs and you're getting it at the best possible price. All the T's and C's will be covered by the financial advisor. Talk to your financial advisor soon. Now that you're set for the best time of your life, talking about personal finance management is very important. The sooner you start, the better the prospect for a healthy financial future. Remember, understand what influences your money decisions. Are you influenced by your family, your social media, or just media? Manage your money very well. Remember to set actionable, realistic financial goals. Take control of your debt. And lastly, protect yourself and your family. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that has been very helpful in helping you achieve your personal financial goals. It's goodbye for now.
So Thabo, I've got a set of questions. Nice presentation that you've done, and I really like all the different areas that you've covered. The 5 areas that you've given us. Can you remind us of the 5 areas that was covered into today's segment?
Absolutely. Firstly, we want to approach our finances as fearless as a lion.
Fearless.
The second bit is, now that we are looking at our finances, we need to be cognitive of our finances like an elephant. Then we deal with our goal setting like a leopard. Then we charge on our debt like a rhino. And finally, we protect our head, that is our family, like a buffalo. Those are the big five that we're going to focus on.
I like the analogy. Thinking of going to Kruger National Park, because I normally don't care about the small stuff. I focus on the big 5. And I like the analogy of the 5 elements that you're covering.
That is the most important part, the big 5. And remember, Thabo, if you look at your money, you can actually pick up the big 5 in your money. So that is why the big 5 is important.
Sure. Thabo, I've got a few questions that I'm going to ask you, and specifically jumping into one segment that really matters. And the first one is really around the debt area. And the first question I'm going to ask you is, how do you assess the risk and potential returns associated with taking on debt for a different purpose?
Oh, Thabo, the first thing, and I love the fact that you start with purpose. Let us know why we want to take on debt. Based on why you want to take on debt, then that will give you a structure of the debt that you want to take on. Is it a short-term debt? Is it an asset-based debt? Is it a long-term debt? Remember, not every debt is bad debt. There's actually good debt. But back to your question, there are risks that are associated with debt, such as, for instance, if you default on a debt, then you will receive a lower credit score that might prohibit you from getting finances in the future. However, with that, also, there are returns, because you can use debt as leverage. Taking debt, purchasing a business, or some asset that will provide income is also good debt. That's how you're going to get return on investment based on the debt. It's called leverage.
Wow, that's why they call you an expert in this particular field. Thanks for that particular answer, Thabo. Then the next question I'm going to ask you is around, in what situation might incurring debt align with long-term financial goals, and when could it be detrimental?
Very important. You spoke again about goals. Now that we know what our lives is and what we want to achieve in life, we've set specific goals. There are short-term goals, there are medium-term goals, and there's long-term goals. In terms of long-term goals, things like starting your own business, buying a house, those are the aspects that you can take, you can borrow money for and finance all of those. Most importantly, assess what is the purpose of that debt. And unfortunately, typically, if you don't know what the purpose of that, the chances are you will misuse that. You will misuse that. But most importantly, is the risk that is associated with debt is only when you default from debt and you don't pay your debt. But otherwise, using long-term debt can be advantageous to you.
Sure. That instant gratification that we have and wanting to take that short holidays, take a short left and all that, and we don't really have that money. And we're tempted to really want to use that and get the credit to just take that short left. What's your view on that?
Oh, I don't think that's a good idea. Here is what the view is. Because the first step in personal finance management is budgeting. Budget for some of the aspects. If you know that you're going to take a holiday at some point, start very early, start putting money aside, and then put the money in that part of your budget in order to finance your holiday. It is not a good idea to lend money to go for a holiday. It is actually some that one could regard as bad debt. Remember, there is nothing wrong with that. There's everything wrong with using credit for the wrong reason. And unfortunately, Thabo, your Mauritius trip might have to wait until you put it as part of your budget and as part of your goals, and you actually finance it that way, not with debt.
Okay, then help me here, Thabo. Some say that debt can really be seen as an investment tool. And if so, how should individuals or businesses approach leveraging it for wealth creation?
Absolutely. Remember, not all debt is bad debt. Good debt can be used as part of leverage. Taking debt, financing your businesses, such as buying stock, buying equipment, buying the buildings for your business, that is a wise investment. And the returns that you get from a business will be used to finance your debt. Remember, what is most important is you servicing your debt. But yes, you can use debt as a leverage to run your business.
Awesome, awesome. Then in terms of situations, emergency situations, and we're always not having enough. When is it justifiable to incur debt for unexpected and emergency situations? And how should individuals plan for such circumstances?
Life can be unfortunately unpredictable. Yes, we do have situations where you need finance and you need it quickly. Short-term finance can be used for that. But most importantly, Thabo, it must be a real, not perceived emergency. So if it's an emergency that you really absolutely need to take lending for, you must stick to that. But most importantly, shop around. Make sure that you get the best deal out of it.
Okay.
Make sure that whatever debt that you want to finance your emergencies with is the debt that you can actually afford. That is the repayment. The risk, remember, is if you take debt, whether it's for emergencies or not, and you are unable to pay it, it will affect your credit scoring. Most importantly, take short-term lending for emergencies and be able to repay back.
Great. Hey, Thabo, today you started throwing terms such as snowball, avalanche, and then I was like, what is Thabo now talking about? So I want you to just jump into some of this. So how does snowball method, I think you call it snowball method, focus on quick wins and small victories, impact on individuals' motivation throughout the debt repayment journey?
Absolutely. And the first things first, Thabo, is most South Africans consume debt. Most of us are on the credit bureau for one reason or another. If you find yourself in a space where you are overwhelmed, do not hide away from that. Most importantly, face your debt head on. There are two methods. There's the snowball and the avalanche. The snowball, you're talking about where you look at those smaller debt that you can quickly repay before you move on to the others. And you can take that money and repay others. And most importantly, it makes you feel good because you can actually see that I've ticked this one debt off and I'm moving to that. Psychologically, surely it makes you feel good about yourself to say, I've ticked this bit, then I can move on to the next one. That is the snowball method of repaying your debt.
Awesome, awesome. Maybe let's jump straight maybe into avalanche. How does the avalanche method contribute to minimizing overall interest payment? And can you provide examples like the financial benefits around it?
Absolutely. The first thing that we need to agree on, Thabo, is debt can be priced differently. So there's different interest rate depending on the debt product that you have. It will start at prime and it might go as far as 25% or even more in some instances. The idea behind the avalanche is look at the most expensive debt that you have and try to repay that one first. Then once you're done with that, then you can go on. In that way, it frees up your cash and you are able to repay. And most importantly, the more you pay the most expensive debt, the cheaper it becomes for the rest of the debt that you can pay.
Wow. I didn't know about avalanche and snowball. Now I feel a little bit educated. Comparing the two, what advice, I don't know whether you can give an advice, but I guess you can. What advice do you have for someone who is undecided between snowball and avalanche method?
The first advice that I would give any person is take stock of your debt. Know who are you owing, how much are you owing, how much is the total cost of what you're owing, what are the periods of the different lending products that you have. Let's say, for example, you have a short-term personal loan, which is 5 years. You have a credit card, you have a car loan that runs to 7 years, and you have a mortgage bond that runs to 20 years. Those are the different products that you have. They are priced differently. The most expensive of all will most likely be your personal loan.
Okay.
So if you look at whichever method, depending on the the product suite that we have will work for you.
Okay.
If you feel like I have a lot of personal loans that are most expensive, the most appropriate method might be the Avalanche, so that you deal with the most expensive debt that you have, and it frees up the space.
Okay.
If, for instance, the pricing of your product is not as material, then you can follow the snowball and say, which one can I repay quicker? Which one is cheaper? Then which one has a lesser installment? Then you start paying it in that way, so that you move the finances to repay the other. Typically, your mortgage bonds, which are longer, are typically cheaper than your personal loans and your credit cards and your car finances. But the most important thing, understand what product you hold. If you have a personal loan, how much does it cost you, and how long are you supposed to repay that? If you have a credit card, you have a car finance, and you have a mortgage bond, understand all those differences and prioritize accordingly.
Wow. Okay. Let's talk about habits, a little bit about financial habits, and to close up our discussion. What key habits or practices do you recommend for someone looking to establish a solid financial foundation?
The first habit, and I suppose is a trait, right, is being honest. Be honest around your finance. Be as transparent as you possibly can around your personal finances. For example, if you are a married person in a family situation, ideally you want to formulate your planning, including your budgeting, around the family itself.
Yeah.
So it needs transparency. So honesty is the first thing. Not just honest with the people that you live with, honest with the people that you're taking their money from. So if you are taking money from person X and person B, and you are unable to repay their money, ideally you want to be honest enough to go back to them and say, hey, I took your money, but I cannot repay you. So therefore, let's make a repayment plan. So honesty is one of them. Secondly, be diligent. So if you go into your budget, right, and you say, these are the budget items that are on my budget, be diligent enough to track them. Okay. If you say, my happy drinks budget is 200, stick to 200. Once it goes over, remember it will have an impact on any other budget line. That's the second bit. Third, and I know this is a tough one, have a side hustle. Have more than one income stream. If there's nothing else that COVID-19 has taught us, is reliance on a single income can be very detrimental. So one of the habits that we have to, at least as South Africans, start inculcating in our lives is polyjobbing. Is having more than one source of income, so that one income source dries up, then you still have something to rely on. That's the last bit. The final one, be transparent with yourself more than anybody else. Hiding your head in the sand does not work in personal finances.
Sure. I hear you on the side hustling part. I wonder whether our corporate is ready for us to be having this side hustle.
Within the rules. Within the rules.
Yes.
Declare whatever interest you have.
Yeah.
Upfront and honestly, if I am a DJ on top of being a financial education facilitator, absolutely.
Doing it on weekends.
If I do my gardening on the side of being a financial planner, nothing wrong with that. So look for your hobbies that could generate income for you and use those as your side hustles. But you're absolutely correct. Make sure that you don't conflict with your main job.
My last question, Thabo. Can you share insights on the role of automation? I think in terms of building financial habits, and I think you spoke about one app earlier in the presentation. So systems that could help us automate, because sometimes we forget to go in and do it administratively and do this and do that. So we end up forgetting it. Like I do my budget, and then every month I don't go check it again. It's like, it's the same. This month is the same, you know? Absolutely. So how do I get to that automation where I can pick up new things that are coming up into my spending and all that? Yeah.
Absolutely. And that is the most important part, especially now more than ever, where almost all the banks offer apps that enable you to create budgets that are linked to your banking accounts. And what it does is you set up your budget in there, you set up the triggers and the notification, and each time you exceed your budget, you get notifications that says, hey, You've set up your budget to be 500. Now you are at 501. Please check with independent apps such as 227 or talk to your bank. Most of the banks in their apps themselves, embedded in there is the budgeting facility. Go in there, link them to your bank account, and then get the notification and make sure that your finances are tracked.
Wow, Thabo, thank you very much.
It's an absolute pleasure.
To our viewers, thank you very much. I really believe that my knowledge has shifted and my financial education has shifted. Now, what's left for me is to focus on shifting the behavior. Thank you very much and joining us in this particular segment. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.